Hello world everyone, my name is Amelia and I have decided that it's time to do another SRS update video. My last video I posted on like December 12th, if I'm not mistaken. So I just decided that it was about time that I just kind of fill everyone in. So anyways, as I had talked about, I go back and just watch those other videos. I do not want to waste my time just talking about what has happened yet. Basically, I could just talk about how I lost my therapist, which, by the way, I just found out that I did permanently lose my therapist. The family emergency had been resolved, and she moved back to Springfield. So yeah, I don't have a therapist anymore. But, I am a little upset at my clinic, who is providing the therapist. They went on to say, oh, well, we're going to get somebody. So supposedly they got back with me. This one person who's a, what's the word? A claim handler or something like that. I forgot what he said his title was, but basically he's like, well, I found somebody who is willing to write you your letter in the place of your therapist who was going to do it, but she wants to do a couple visits with you first. And I was considering it, and he's just like, well, I'll have them contact you and da-da-da-da. Well, pretty much most of December went by. I had a lot come up. Not a whole lot of aggression on my end. I did consistently keep the idea back in my head, like, what should I do? I don't know. Well, as I also mentioned in the last video about my SRS update, is that I got suggestion from one of my coworkers to go see a therapist by the which I'll go ahead and give her out because I think she was a great therapist. I definitely would recommend people consider her. Her name was Emily Foltz. I showed up to the thing. She had a whole process, which, by the way, that's something else I want to do in this video, just so you guys are pre-warned. I have my letters. So, Emily Foltz was all set up and ready to go for her writing of the letter. She requires typically 2 visits. Well, I think, yeah, typically 2 visits. And like I said, I found her all through recommendation of a coworker. And then the other person I found, which I had found her, I don't know, it's right around the time. So, okay, so I guess I'll go back to it. So I went out middle of December and I saw Emily Foltz. And I was greatly disappointed to find out that Emily Foltz was not a PhD. I don't know where the miscommunication came up. I was obviously very depressed about it. She could even tell I left the office depressed, being like, oh, I did all this work, and then, nope, you're not a PhD psychologist. And I told her that, I was totally, like, taking all the responsibility for it. I'm like, I'm sorry, it's my fault, I should have checked. I was just going off of what my coworker said, and honestly, I'm very surprised if it turned out that my coworker had gotten what they needed with only 1 letter from just a therapist. That's not really fair. So, I went ahead, and since I didn't have, excuse me, since I didn't have another therapist lined up to get me one, and I had already spent the $50 on the first appointment, I went ahead and made the second appointment and showed up so that she got me my letter, which, like I said, I got the letter here. But right after that, I had started to contact other therapists. I was talking to my assistant over with my insurance company, and she basically told me that, she basically was trying to help me out, but unfortunately, none of the therapists that my insurance actually had on their list, I don't know where she was exactly pulling that list from, would necessarily give me what I was looking for. It actually turns out, after I've been searching, that majority of the therapists who actually can provide the letters needed for transgender affirmative care are typically not on any panels. Very strange. Honestly, I don't really understand how that's a thing. If WPATH is so intertwined with these insurance companies, why is there not more therapists on the panels of these insurance companies? My one online friend, she sat there and told me, she's like, well, that's because they want to make it as hard as possible for you to get your care. And I'm like, well, maybe, but that kind of seems a little overly intentional, if that's the case. So anyways, I'm just going to share with people really quick the best resource I found for finally finding your therapist or your psychologist for getting you your letters. And that is, let me see if I can put it right here up on the screen, lgbtguild.com/directory. You can go on there and you can specify parameters. I'm looking down at the website right now. Special parameters like location, what is it they specialize in, are they a PhD, all those things. They give you the phone number, they tell you if they're accepting, and you just basically pick up the phone, call them, try to schedule an appointment. One of the, I think her name was Dr. Colligan? I can't pronounce her name right now, I didn't look it up beforehand. She basically, I got a hold of her and she was like, well, I could do your PhD letter. She was like, but unfortunately my wait time right now was like 2 months. So definitely better than what KU was going to give me. So I was looking at, like, I think she said like beginning of February. So definitely better than what KU was going to do, but still a wait. Then she actually threw out like 3 or 4 other names. Again, I don't have those names in front of me, but ultimately I ended up getting a hold of somebody that she said she has seen at conventions, and that person apparently had some interest in this stuff, and she's PhD, and I got a hold of her, and at first she was a little bit like, well, I've never done this before, I'm not really sure. She's like, I kind of understand how it works, but ultimately what it came down to, she's like, I'll give it a try. So I got an appointment with her, and then she sent me a letter. Now, unfortunately, the difference between the 2 letters, Emily Folt's letter is definitely much more detailed, much more in-depth, and really goes into detail. I don't know, it feels like a really good letter, and I think that's also because she's just really good at it. The other person, I won't say who she is just because I don't want to be like saying bad things about her. Her letter's good, but there was definitely I felt like there were some grammar mistakes in it. I did end up like practically rewriting the letter and sending it back to her and being like, I'm so sorry I rewrote your letter. I'm like, but could we make this the letter? I'm like, there's some things in your letter that just don't feel like it was things I actually told you. It feels like it was kind of a white lie. And I didn't want to necessarily have to deal with that. So, and I mean, I'm not saying it was like she intentionally did it to try to give me a better chance of getting covered. I just didn't really feel like it was very well thought out. Now, she went off and had a hysterectomy done right after it. So we have one problem on hand, and that's the fact that she wrote the letter and she misspelled my last name. And she went off to go get her hysterectomy, and now KU is trying to get a hold of her to get her to fix my letter so that they can submit my insurance claim. And yeah, she's not responding. So I really don't know when they're going to take care of that. And a matter of fact, here very soon, coming now that I'm just a couple days from February, I really need to get on somebody's butt about this. So anyways, I am going to try really quickly just going over the letters, because I know this is something that people are very curious, like what are the kind of things that, I mean, I'm sure people would just be, this is informative. What are the kind of things that somebody would include in a letter approving, recommending surgery? So, which, by the way, the good thing is about getting these letters is it means I am not fake. I'm sorry, I just had to say that. I know it doesn't really matter. So I'm gonna go over the good letter, so I'll just graze over this, which I think is written really well. Emily Foltz wrote, "This letter serves as recommendation for Amelia Green for gender reassignment surgery. My name is Emily Foltz. I'm a licensed professional counselor working in Kansas City, Missouri." She writes her license number. "I hold a master's in arts, professional counseling from Texas. I have met license requirements to practice in the state of Missouri, yada, yada, yada. I have completed fellowship at the Transgender Institute, da, da, da. So she's doing her credentials. Amelia is a 32-year-old trans woman. She has been seen in my office on December 9th and December 23rd for mental health evaluation and determine her overall status and capacity to move forward with gender confirmation surgery. This was the first time I've had the opportunity to evaluate Amelia. We discussed her needs and readiness for surgery, her experiences with gender dysphoria and transition, and her plans to recover and life after surgery. The diagnostic impression for Amelia, based on my professional assessment, observation, and her self-report, according to DSM-5 criteria, is gender dysphoria for adolescents and adults. Amelia has a well-documented history of persistent gender dysphoria and describes experiences of dysphoria dating back to early childhood. She reported being aware of her identity as young as 4 years old. She reported feeling confused about her place when she started recognizing gender differences between boys and girls and telling her cousins, "I'm really a girl." She stated that when she was faced with rejection and noticed a disapproval for trans people or feminine men, she learned how to close herself up. She stated that she has always been aware of it, but kept her identity buried until her 20s. Amelia reported she spent her 20s exploring her identity and by her early 30s recognized she couldn't continue to live as a guy. That was basically my cross-dressing and cross-playing phase. Since recognizing her need to transition, Amelia has taken consistent steps to live authentically as herself. She began coming out to her wife and close friends in her 20s and early 30s and began dressing in public during this time. She began living out full-time in September of 2018 and announced her transition on Facebook in the fall of 2018. Kind of true. I actually, in September, created a new Facebook profile, but that eventually got leaked, so it really doesn't matter. She has undergone more than 13 months of continuous hormone therapy, at this point with no periods of disruption. She legally changed her name and gender marker in May of 2019. Amelia has experienced strong social support from her ex-wife and even from some unexpected sources of support from her high school friends. She reported having a plan for recovery from surgery and has a support system ready to assist her as needed. She stated she is currently taking preparative steps to make sure her house is ready and a good environment for recovery. She has roommates and friends who will be available to help her as needed. She stated that even though my parents do not support my transition, I know they love me and will be available to help if I need anything. That's something to discuss for some other point in time. Amelia's need for surgery is real, significant. She reported that this procedure has always been a part of her plan for transition and represents an opportunity for real change and improvement in her quality of life. She stated that even though her dysphoria has improved with the significant steps that have taken transition so far, it continues to persist to a clinical degree and interferes with her quality of life. She reported a real sense of urgency in moving forward with surgery because she feels like I can't make future plans with this hanging over my head. She looks forward to feeling more comfortable and congruent, that's the word, with her body and feels free to pursue meaningful romantic relationships. She stated that after she's recovered from surgery, she plans on consider other options for future career path and education without worrying about the disruption and dysphoria in the way it has been in the past. Amelia presents psychologically stable for surgery. No evidence of symptoms of psychosis or personality disorder are apparent. Amelia's experience of gender dysphoria does appear to be clinically significant. Though she has experienced strong social support, her personal experience with dysphoria continues to cause her clinical significant distress in social, occupational, and other important areas of functioning. She reported no history of nicotine use and has no history of drug use. Furthermore, Amelia is oriented, aware, and has the capacity to make full, informed decisions to consent for treatment. She reported the intent and ability to comply with long-term follow-up requirements, as well as post-operative expectations. This patient has met the W-PATH criteria for surgery. She is aware of the risks, benefits, and limitations of surgery, including potential effects of sexual health. After discussing her need and readiness for surgery, I have decided to support Amelia's decision to move forward with this step. I am pleased to recommend and refer Amelia Green for gender confirmation surgery. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Okay, that was like 6 minutes to read. but done. Anyways, and then the letter from the other person mostly says the same thing. Let me see if I can go over this real quick. She basically, it's interesting. So Emily's letter probably focused more on my childhood, while this letter focused more on my adulthood. It says, in my 20s, I felt like I had a split identity, identifying as female and feeling the necessity to act male. I was able to find groups in which she could dress and act as a female. For a time, this was the only place of support. She came out publicly in 2008, began dressing full-time, yada yada. So, basically, not a whole lot of difference, and I don't want to waste much more time on the second letter. She uses, interestingly, she used a different diagnosis code. I don't know why, but anyways, this is the one that I don't know what's going to happen with it, considering she misspelled my name on it. Now, however, the backup plan is I do have a actual psychology appointment scheduled with KU middle of February now. I went ahead and just took the next available one, and I'm only keeping it until I know absolutely what's happening with this letter. If it comes back that either, you know, maybe there's something wrong with the letter, or they can't get a hold of her, or it just turns into a nightmare, I will just go to that appointment with KU and just get it over with. I think it's only one appointment I need to do. I show up, get it over with, we're in and out. I think I'm like 2 or 3 weeks away from that point. I think 3 weeks from that appointment anyways, so I'm not really too concerned about it right now. I have had some life difficulties come up, some hindrances for me being able to move forward. There's the fact that my work, because I haven't been at my job for 1 year, I am not going to get any pay while I'm on leave. I have to be on leave for 6 weeks. I'm not going to get anything. I'm basically going to go unpaid. I almost wonder if it would be worth me creating some sort of GoFundMe to help me with that, because as it stands right now, I have a lot of bills and I have a lot of things over my head. I have people who don't think I'm ready for surgery, but honestly, when it really comes down to it, I don't know how much longer I can go without it. Now, one thing that just some little things that have happened over the last month, I actually met somebody at my job. It was kind of weird because I was kind of hinting at me going in for a surgery, and right away she knew what surgery I was talking about, which means she clocked me, sadly. But she was really nice, and she told me, it turns out that her husband is a hand and ear plastic surgeon. He had some familiarity with KU, and she was able to talk into me and giving me recommendations on how to navigate this whole thing. One huge thing she told me was that basically do not get your surgery between June and September. She told me that June and September is the months that KU likes to bring in students to get hands-on experience. So she's like, you do not want to risk a student doing your surgery. Do not do it. If June gets here, wait until September. That's disappointing to hear, but I definitely appreciate that. The other thing she told me is she's like, well, because I told her how I really don't have a whole lot of options for places to go. And she agreed with me. And she actually told me, she says, well, yeah, it's understandable. I mean, you're in the middle of the country. Not a lot you can do, you know. And she basically said, I don't think KU will do a bad job. She said, a lot of times trans women can look like guinea pigs to a lot of these surgeons that don't do a whole lot of them. But she said, I do believe that KU does have your best interests at heart, but it's just going to be a matter of getting down into the grid of it. There hasn't been a whole lot else to be able to really report about this whole process. Again, I'm waiting at this point. I'm just waiting for them to call me. I'm waiting for them to get a hold of me. I know what the current holdup is. I haven't really been jumping on their back and getting them to get this pushed through, mostly just because of some of my life disruptions. I'm still really hoping that this can happen in the spring before summer gets here. I know that's going to suck. I've had a lot of people tell me, like, do you really want that to be? Because, you know, you're pretty much going to be immobilized for all of summer. And while I can understand that, I did tell my one friend, I said, well, the problem is that if that's the case, summer's going to come, and what am I going to start seeing? I'm going to start seeing women in bikinis and leggings, which I even see it now, and it's just like, oh my gosh, when I see it, I get so jealous. And I mean, that's not to say, oh, I can't live through that again. It's just, it's very hard. It's very hard for someone like me to have as much dysphoria as I do over down there, and to see that and then just be like, just this isn't right. I have very major dysphoria over it. Anyways, that's about all I can say. I'm going to end this video here. This is as long as my last video I did on it. I'm not going to do that same mistake again. Anyways, I will talk to you later. Do not forget to subscribe to me on social media and follow me here and subscribe to me here on Facebook. Talk to you later. Bye.